Hello and welcome to another episode of the Community Safety and Security series here on the Serenity Resource Connector. Thank you for joining us, whether you're here with us live or you're watching the replay. If this is your first time tuning in, a warm welcome to you. It is always a pleasure to share with you in this space. And we are going to be talking about some safety and security measures that we ought to be considering when we are planning an event, whether it's that family gathering with or you're bringing over a bunch of friends. There are always security concerns that we ought to consider if it's a community event, a church event, whatever the nature of the event. So we have with us to share their expertise DSP Antonio Cardoza, Operations Officer for the Clarendon Police Division. And we have with us District Officer Omar Rohn from the Jamaica Fire Brigade, Clarendon Division. And you would have seen someone else on the first flyer. You saw Superintendent just now. That was just an intro to Superintendent Horace Thomas, the new Chief of Fire in Clarendon. So you'll be seeing him around. All right. But welcome, gentlemen. It's great to have you here on the Serenity Resource Connector.
Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about it, because it dawned on me that when we're planning events, we generally have our checklist and we're checking off the date, the time, and the number of invitees and all of those good stuff. But rarely for some of these events, you have safety and security measures that's on it. But that is important, isn't it? Especially in your line of work.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So let's start by looking at events. Let's start with those events that require a permit. What are some of the things that you'll check for at the police division when you're considering an application?
Right. So good night again to you and the viewers. So in relation to events that require permits, so really once you are applying for, once you plan to have an event, whether this is a outdoor church function, this is a dance, a party, whatever that event is, one would need to apply for permits for that event. So the first order of business is that you need to apply to the superintendent of police in charge of the particular police division. And this particular application is under the Noise Abatement Act. You should also be applying for a place of amusement license, so that you will apply for through the municipal corporation for the particular parish that you plan to have your event. Once you apply for these events, then it is put through a process. And as you spoke earlier about safety into consideration, so we will do some investigations, some of the things that we take into consideration, where you're going to have your event, the number of persons that you plan to have, and the police will also take into consideration who is applying for this particular event, because that is also important, because we need to take the character of persons and weigh the risk factors as to whether whether it is violence or otherwise that may happen at this event. So really, once you're planning an event, you ought to apply through your municipal council and the police. There are other things that we will have to take into consideration, and I know the district officer will speak about some of those things, and all of this is taken into account the safety and security of the persons at your event.
Awesome. Wow, that one arm. Who? All right, interesting. And we'll talk more about that later. District Officer Rohn, jump in there. On the fire safety side, what do you look for that application?
Good night again, everyone. Um, so we look for the space. Does the space is the requisite space to hold the number of persons that the promoter or whoever keeping the event will want to accommodate. We also look at fire extinguishers, the required amount of fire extinguishers needed for that particular event. Lighting, proper lighting, so that person can enter and exit the premises. Also, sterile areas, that we need sterile areas to be in place. So in the event of an emergency or something happen, then you know that for the fire unit to come on ground, then we need the area to be clear so that the unit can go to and fro easily. Depends on the magnitude of the event. You also need the, 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 the an ambulance service to be on spot at all times, because person drink and person get drunk and all those stuff, and anything can happen to anyone, right? So you need the ambulance on the spot so that they can carry out first aid activities if needed. Um, Also, exit areas, you need at least two exits at all times for any venue, right? So if in the event that for proper person to exit the building, to exit the premises properly, effectively, and efficiently in an orderly manner, then you know that you need the required amount of exit for a person to to exit the premises.
All right. That's really, really amazing. Some of these different things. And it's all three entities working together, the police, the fire, and the municipal corporation, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Right, because we did have a discussion as it relates to licensing and permit with the municipal corporation. For those who missed that episode, that's in the playlist with the local governance and community development, that series. So you can check for licensing and permit, and you'll get some details as it relates to the cost and all of those good stuff and the timing and all of that. But DSP Cardoza, would you be able to provide uh, just a brief synopsis of as to how the process currently works? Because I know that it's different from other parishes or other divisions. So how does it currently
Okay.
work?
Okay, yes. So as it stands now, Clarendon Division has a memorandum of understanding with the municipal corporation for Clarendon. So what we have endeavored to do is have a one-stop shop. So instead of having to drop your application off at the police headquarters, drop another application off at the municipal corporation, go to the fire brigade if that is necessary for your particular event, as well as going to other agencies as required. One application process is done at the municipal corporation. What will happen from there is that the municipal corporation will send the application to the police headquarters. From there, we will do our due diligence. And as I said earlier, we will take into consideration in our inquiries things like the character of the particular individuals that have applied for these events. The fact of the matter is that we know that some of the persons who have applied for events are persons of questionable character, persons who would want to make money to use it with criminal intent. We also know that some of the persons who have applied for these events are actually not the promoters themselves. So they are actually just the face of this application. And that, in terms of safety, poses a concern, because then you're not quite sure who are the type of persons who will attend this event and what kind of harm may result from that. So we will do our due diligence at the police headquarters, and our due diligence may be if it is event that will be held in, let us say, say, a Hayes police area, then that application is sent to Hayes. They will do their inquiries and send it back to the police headquarters. Once we are done with our inquiries and we are satisfied, well, whether or not we are satisfied, we will send our recommendations back to the council. The council will also make some determination, similar to what the fire chief spoke to earlier, in terms of looking at the number of persons projected to attend the event, the particular location, that's the venue of the event, as well as other things, exit entrances for the event, and just to ensure that it is safe. The council will also, as I said, depending on the nature of the event, send the applications to the fire department for some inquiries to be made as well. In some instances, you may, as a district officer spoke about the having an ambulance, because there are some events that, let us say, a big stage show might require an ambulance. If it is a, let us say, a race similar to what we will have at Vernon Field from time to time, those kind of events will require an ambulance. It's almost a must for it. So once all entities are satisfied, the requisite fees are paid, and the police don't have a fee unless it's for private services, then the requisite permits are granted.
All right. Is the process done simultaneously in terms of when it's sent over to the police and the fire at the same time, or does one entity check and then if it's okay?
No, the process is actually done simultaneously. We are aware that persons sometimes will wait on the last minute to apply for their events, and this is one of the things that I would just want to use this opportunity as well to encourage promoters of events to come out very early with their application. The Noise Abatement Act allows 10 clear days. We are pretty much saying to promoters that that is simply not enough. We, based on our MOU, we actually ask persons to come in 21 days. So utilizing the regulations under the municipal corporation. So we are actually allowed to ask them to come in much earlier, and we will do that processing. And the time is actually very, very crucial to us, because we have to ensure that safety and security of the patrons are of paramount importance.
Right. And 21 days seems reasonable, because you need to make sure your venue is cleared before you start promoting.
Yes.
And you need some time to promote, right?
And let me just hasten to say that promoters start promoting their events months in advance. Months in advance. So they know very well that they are going to have an event, but they wait on the last minute. And it's actually not in their best interest, because applying for an event does not mean that you will actually be granted permission.
Wow. A word to the wise to invest in so much money. All right, we have Longville Park in the house. Cecilia Livingston, Campbell Livingston is greeting your DSP Cardoza.
How are you doing, Ms. Livingston?
All right, welcome to the Longville Park community. Go ahead, Officer Rowan.
To add to Mr. Cardoza, for the fire department, I think the cost is $6,000 for the permit. So the parish council will give you a slip when you take it to the fire department. When you come to the fire department, you fill out an application. Then you'll be given an emergency plan form. And the emergency plan form entails name of organizer, the location of the event, the time frame, the projected number of persons that you're expecting. Also, fire wardens, because it depends on the type of event. You may need 2 or 3, maybe even 4 or 6 fire wardens. And fire wardens are personnel who will, walk the compound, ensure that it is safe right throughout the tenure of the event. Also, you will also need to put the nearest fire station to you, um, contact number for the fire station. If an ambulance service is going to be needed, you need to put the name of the ambulance service, the provider. And after filling all that application, then we will go to the location and carry out a thorough inspection. As I said before, inspection pertaining the number of exits, entrances, pertaining the fire coverage that you have, fire extinguishers, how many you need. Suppose it's an event, for example, a stage show, you're going to have a person going to be there cooking and all those stuff. Then those persons you need to provide fire extinguishers for each one of those persons, or adequate number of fire extinguisher that will suffice for maybe 5 persons in a particular area. So maybe 3 or maybe 4. You don't have to have each of them. Don't have to have 1, but if you have maybe 3 in that area where you have 5 persons cooking, I guess that will do, right? Also, as I said before, the sterile area is supposed to be clear. So all of those, we will come and we will look at the location. If there are any breaches pertaining to, fire safety, those need to be corrected before a permit will be given. So it's not, and every venue, every location is peculiar. So you know that, this one won't have the same recommendation like the other and so forth. So it is needed. Persons who are putting on event, it is needed for us, the fire department, to be there to ensure that you have a safe event.
Indeed. All right. You mentioned fire wardens. Are these persons provided through the fire department?
Right. Just as the DSP said, you can pay for the service for fire wardens, right? So you can provide maybe your own, maybe you have an institution where those persons can get them. We will come and check to see their certificate if they are trained fire wardens, or you can use the fire department personnel.
Okay. But in terms of using the fire department personnel, do you have enough resources that can
Yes.
dispatch to different events?
Yes. Remember, we work on shift, so you have persons who will be half at that given time. So we call those persons to come and fulfill those gaps.
Similar to the police, because you
Similar.
usually use those who are off, right?
Right. So for the JCF, there is a private work policy that is in place. And
Okay.
for the private work policy, these are, for the most part, off-duty personnel that are engaged in these services. But I will say, too, that the promoters, organizers of these events can also acquire private security guards for these events. And that is actually very, very important, especially for a Clarendon division. Persons will tend to just think about the money. So, hey, I just want to make some money. This is my birthday bash. I have whatever target that I need to achieve it with some cash. And they disregard totally the security aspect of it. And security here has several meanings. So it may very well mean something slightly different for us as police in comparison to the fire department. We have to take into consideration things like persons coming into events with weapons. These may be knives, these may be firearms, or whatever objects that can be converted to the use as a weapon. And so when you have a proper security mechanism in place, persons actually need to be searched, need to declare what they have in their possession that is a weapon or can be used as a weapon. And there must be some security measures in place. So if persons are licensed firearm holders, there must be a system, or ought to be a system in place, where these firearms are secured and not actually taken into the venue itself, or we may have some challenges. And if you look at social media in recent times, I mean, in Clarendon, there is someone at a party, a licensed firearm holder, well, Based on the video, we believe that this is a licensed firearm holder. Investigations are being carried out. And these are persons doing gun salutes. Now, this can result in criminals trying to relieve these firearm holders of their firearm, who most times they are possibly intoxicated, whether fully or slightly. And then this leads to several other crimes. So security is really something that promoters have to invest in, and not just think about the benefits from the events itself.
That's right. And even as we talk about the promoters, what about those gatherings that are held, not necessarily those big stage shows and all of that, but you might have a number of persons coming over. It might be in a community. Suppose the church is having a big fun day, having this fellowship, and you have a lot of people getting together. What are some of the things that needs to be considered? Or even you're having one of those brunch on the lawn where you have a number of people coming over. How do you treat with those?
Well, similar to the entertainment events, persons have to take the security of patrons into consideration. Whereas we will not expect persons to apply for an event in the church house itself, but certainly you're looking at conventions. These are things that may pose security challenges depending especially on the area in which it is being held. Because of course persons are prone to robberies, persons are prone to attack. And of course, as the district officer mentioned, we have to think about the what if. So, what if there is a fire? What if there is, let us say, a shooting? What if, persons, what is the emergency plan that you have in place? Is it that everybody is just running in the same direction, trampling over each other? And if there ought to be a security plan, and the security plan should be displayed somewhere, explained to the patrons that are attending. So in the event that there is something happening, whatever, whether it is a natural disaster or just an emergency taking place, then person knows that is the single things must.
All right. So the whole evacuation plan. All right. So let's go into some best practices for event organizers. And sometimes when you say event organizers, persons might look at it as those party promoters and so on. But if I'm organizing a meeting where I'm bringing together a bunch of people, that's event organizing, right? You look at it
Right.
that way, right? Whatever
Yes.
event it is that you're organizing. So in terms of emergency response, just we were sharing just now in terms of that checklist that you need to have some measures, the plan. So once I look at it, like I go into some buildings and they say in the event of an earthquake, exit this way, are the meeting point if you're in certain locations and so on. So some best practices as it relates to that for implementation, say those organizations, maybe churches, offices that do not have this in place. How, how would you suggest they go about it? Is this
Well,
something
for
that
the
you can
fire
provide some
department,
guidance with? Go ahead.
normally I said for we will go in and we will carry out an inspection. That inspection now will give us an idea of the premises. What we do most of the times, then we will ask the nearby fire station to take a tour, because we call that a familiarization tour. Because if anything should happen, they are the one who's going to respond to that event or to that area. So there we go and take a walk through, see the building, top to bottom, side by side, and so forth. Get a detail look first and look at the building itself. Then you need to put in recommendations, depends on, I said, amount of fire extinguishers needed, if a fire alarm is needed, smoke detectors, also evacuation area in the event of an emergency. Where would you go? So you activate the alarm, you evacuate, you go to the assembly point, then you do your roll call and see that everyone is accounted for, right? So all of those things, all of those recommendation information, we will give um, the operator or the owner of the premises those information, and they will actually put it in place. And also, if they need us to come and to speak to the staff, you know, to give them a first-hand view of what to do in the event that such thing could happen, then we will do that as well.
Awesome. So for the community representatives who are connected or will be watching the replay, pay attention to that. This is something that you can add to your list of activities for this year to ensure that you have the fire safety personnel come in and help to guide you directly, because each situation is unique depending on the setup, right?
Yes.
So,
Right.
right. So it's
And,
good to have,
and
yes.
right. And we also have a community fire safety program, which will go into the community. A community that has a citizen association that is, you can call us in. We will come and we'll train those persons as fire wardens in the community. So
Awesome.
those persons have first-hand knowledge of what to do in the event of a fire or any other emergency. Fire hydrants, we go in and paint them and we flush them and work with the community members and get them up and running as well.
All right. I trust my DAC and Community Development Committee leaders are hearing that. So you don't have to seek to do it all by yourself. This is why we have this kind of dialogue where you can get the information as to where you can access these resources. All right. So as it relates to, we're still on best practices in terms of crowd control. DSP Cardoza, you want to take that
Yes.
one?
So similar to the fire department, a part of our due diligence is to actually go to some of these locations as well. So we have to look at your floor plan, for want of a better term. So where will your patrons be? Where will the stage area be? Where are your exit entrance points? And also in terms of security, we are looking also at money collection spots. If it is an event that you are selling items there, whether it is liquor, food, whatever it is, if you're collecting money at the gate, where exactly are you storing these funds? Because the fact of the matter is that there are criminals out there that are watching. They know of all of these events. They're watching social media like everybody else. They are seeing these flyers going around, and they will just plan like the organizers, and probably sometimes even better than them, to go there and just wait on the opportune time to rob patrons. And of course, if any resistance may come, then that may lead to serious injuries, or in worst case scenario, even death. So we, like the fire department, will go to the locations, make our assessment. Depending on the nature and size of the event, we make recommendations as it relates to security in place. We have had events where persons have security mechanisms in place. Patrons are searched entering the events. However, um, some organizers have had to hire security companies with canines to walk the perimeter of the venue, because persons will throw contraband over the fencing. So these are things that you have to, so it's not, the point is, it's not just about making the money at all. Looking even broadening the aspect of security a little further, we have to take into consideration parking. facilities. Now, if you're going to have an event and the event is along the highway or a main road, where are your patrons going to park? Now, this may lead to collisions. So you have your parked vehicle, another vehicle comes and crashes in it. We also have to look at the situation where patrons themselves exiting or entering the premises may be prone to serious injuries if it is there's not sufficient parking or appropriate parking. Security again, is it that you will park your vehicle in a secure area? And if not, what security mechanisms do you have in place? So these are just this what I mentioned earlier is just a short list of some of the things that you really have to take into consideration with an event. It's really not just a fly by night. It's really not just about the money at all.
Right, which is why I think the discussion is so important, because as you kept mentioning, it's not about the money, because quite often, even in terms of access control measures, it's usually to ensure that everyone going through those gates have paid. But access control as it relates to security measures, how important is that? All right.
Right. So access control in regards to security measures. So again, you need to take into consideration that whoever you're admitting into your venue will not, or the possibility of them causing harm to themselves or other patrons of this event is very, very low. And whatever you have to do at that access point to ensure that safety is maintained, then that has to be done. So even persons, as I mentioned earlier, who are licensed firearm holders, yes, they may present a license, but then in the same breath, when they get inside and they are intoxicated, then what will happen thereafter? The person's perception when they are intoxicated at whatever level is very different from a person who is not intoxicated. And they may take offense to the slightest thing. So that may lead now to disputes, physical altercations, and one thing leads to another. And we have seen it all. Now, I can tell you from the police perspective, it is not the easiest thing to intervene in an incident within a crowd, because you're looking at something in terms of a stampede happening there. So you have to control every single aspect of this event and treat with all the what ifs. So access in, how do you get in? What do you get in with? How do you get out? Is the access point the same as the exit point? And that's very crucial. If you're going to have a lot of persons, you probably don't want a situation like that. If there's not a separate entry exit point, you might want to create one using whatever mechanism, temporary fencing, whatever it is you have to use. But these things are very, very crucial in terms of the security of your venue and your event.
Indeed, which means the patrons have to take some amount of responsibility, because
Oh
it's not just
yes.
about going to be entertained.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. And that is it's a very, very important point. Everyone has a responsibility for his or her own security. So going to an event, you have to plan. So is it that, because you see, it's not only the security at the venue itself that we take into consideration, and that's why I said that security can mean several things depending on from what lens you're looking through. So for the police, this could be security at the venue itself, once leaving the venue, going to the venue, Because in some areas, would you want, let us say, especially a female to be walking alone along a particular corridor to the event? So when you're planning an event, it's not just about getting the persons at the venue itself. Um, and of course making money there. But what about the safety of persons getting to the event? Patrons at the end of the day, as I said earlier, need to take their own security in place. So what's the plan to get home after the event? What if when you go to the event, you end up spending much longer than you have the time that you wanted to spend? Is there a taxi that is going to be on the road at that time? What if your vehicle get disabled? What is your contingency plan? Who do you call? Right? And we have several persons turning up at the station, um, let us say at ungodly hours in the mornings, asking for transportation to go home. And we're talking about some remote areas within the division. The fact is, we really just don't have the resources to accommodate that kind of thing when you had a responsibility to ensure that you took care of at least your transportation.
Indeed. Useful information indeed. Welcome, Sir Barnswell. Great to have you. And Sir Holmes greeting you all on behalf of the business community there in Maypen.
Good night.
Welcome, Sir Holmes, and the rest of the Clarendon businesses that's represented here, or you're going to be watching the replay. Always a pleasure to have you join us for these very important information, because it's a whole lot. And I'm glad you captured in terms of those security tidbits for the patrons themselves, because we tend to look to the police for so many things.
Yes,
It's amazing, right? But in terms of, you went through some amount of crowd control. All right. So the event coordinators, they have done their due diligence, and despite their best efforts, something happens. In the event of a fire, Officer Rowan, what do they do?
Call the nearest fire station. And whenever a promoter or event organizer comes into us, we always inform them of the nearest fire station to their location. So they should ensure that the numbers are displayed right across the venue, especially in the most important areas, for example, the stage area and the exit areas, right? So the fire station number should be displayed that in the event of a fire, they could call the fire station and the fire station will respond to the fire as quickly as possible. Remember, I spoke about the sterile areas, right? So these areas should be kept clear at all times. So if there should be a fire there and they contact the fire department, whenever the fire department come into the event or to the location where the fire is, then they should have free access to and through that area. Also, they should ensure that evacuation, taking place so that persons can evacuate that area safely. Area should be lit, as I said before, so that in evacuating that area, person can see where they are going. Because you don't want the situation to get worse, or someone trying to evacuate and then they may, maybe fall in a hole, or maybe there's some barbed wire somewhere about the place. So all hazard should be eliminated from the venue. So in the event of an emergency, person can evacuate in a steady pace, a uniform pace, and quickly as possible.
Awesome. It's very amazing, because sometimes I don't even think about these things. But
that's the thing. Most persons don't think about fire, just fire. But there's a lot of things that comes in play, a lot of things that need to be sorted out, in order for things to be, an area to be free from hazard.
right. So even in selecting the venue, we have to do due diligence to ensure that some of these the signs are clearly placed so that when it is that the checks are being done, you would have already done those preliminaries before. Right. Amazing. All right, DSP Cardoza, from your end,
Yes. Mhm.
what are some of the incidences that you have come across, and what should be done in the event of some of these happening despite
Well,
the best efforts?
well, as you said, the despite best efforts, we are cognizant of the fact that coordinators of events, promoters, will not always be in 100% control of all things that may happen at their event. What we would like though is, in the event that something should happen, and of course this depends on the actual incident itself. We're expecting persons to immediately make communication with the police, and if you're not sure of your local police station number, then of course simply call 119. That number is very easy for you to recall. It's universal, really, and the police emergency control center will communicate with the appropriate station to respond to these incidents. Um, Pretty much, if you put if you implement most of the security measures initially, you may not have a lot of trouble within your venue itself. But let us say that there's a fight, then we expect persons to not not converge as to where the fight is. Persons tend to like to take out cameras and start to video, and then they get themselves in the crossfire, so to speak. So we would like persons to get themselves out of the immediate danger, and this does not mean that you ought to be there ought to be a stampede getting out, but I expect persons at the end of the day not to be there and get themselves involved in what is happening really. I expect that promoters, coordinators, security officers that are at these events to take control as it relates to their security plan. So there ought to be something in place where, in the event that this happens at a certain section, how do you get persons to safety? And that's why it is important for certain announcements to be made, certain signs to be displayed at these events. So just in case. What has been affecting some of these promoters, however, is that they sit and say nothing at all. So things will escalate, and then from there that may affect not only the persons directly involved in these altercations or whatever incidents it might be, but it may affect your future with regards to other events.
All right, this is a great one. Thanks for joining, Janice. It's a good thought, but is it really practical, and will it be followed through, considering some of these events are held openly in public spaces?
Right. So we and this is one of the challenges that we have in granting permits for events. So persons will come down, and what they want is they want the event to be held. And when we speak about security measures, that is like the last thing on their mind. But wherever the venue is that we end up permitting, if it's a very open space, it actually might be a little bit easier depending on the type of incident to control, because then persons can get to a safe position a little quicker. However, it all depends on what is happening at the particular event. And as we said earlier, of course, promoters will not have full control of everything that happens and when persons, become boisterous and otherwise. But at the end of the day, we have to have that plan. The important thing is the plan. And even when if it deals with policing, if it is the fire, Whatever the kind of situation is, you always have to have a plan. And whenever the incidents take place, you execute what part of the plan you need to execute in order to get to safety.
All right, fantastic. All right, we're going to move into discussion as Janice brought this up as it relates to events that are requests are made for, like at the clock in Maypen. What are some of the considerations that go into that application? On a Saturday, you have these different activities that might be happening. May have one of those road shows rolling into town on a busy Saturday. What are some of the considerations as to what happens in terms of the location?
Well, we do take into consideration the nature of the event. And there are some events that are of higher risk than others. So depending on the nature of the event, and usually if it's on a busy day, then we would not be granting street dance, for argument's sake. But of course, there are some entities that will promote their particular organization or have certain promotions, and these may be allowed. But what we do take into consideration is allowing the traffic to flow. And we're talking about both vehicular and pedestrian traffic. So we would not want, because of this event is a road show, whatever the event is, for persons to be interested in what is happening and lose sight of what is happening on the roadway. So we have to make provisions for an area that, say a sterile area, in order to ensure that the persons who want to view what is happening and participate in that promotion, for them to be safe while still allowing the normal pedestrian and vehicular traffic to proceed. We also take into consideration the likelihood of there being of criminals actually preying on these events as well. So we're looking at maybe even at the basic level, pickpocketing. So those are some of the things that we have to warn persons about, and these are the kind of discussions that we have with the coordinators of these events. Of course, there are incidents where these promotions stages are made, and the stages might tear down. So even those things we have to take into consideration as relates to how sturdy of a platform you may be having and for these events.
It's a lot of work.
Yes, it is.
A lot of work indeed, but it's very important for our safety. All right, we want to look at, there are a number of areas across Clarendon currently that no permits are being allowed for between February 27th to July 1, 2023.
Oh
That's
yes,
right. DSP.
yes.
All right, share with us, help the viewers have a better understanding and appreciation for why it is that these areas have to be so impacted at this time. What's happening in those areas?
Well, I can tell you we take the safety of citizens in Clarendon Division of paramount importance. We recognize that these events are things that cause persons to make money. Persons at the end of the day, this is their livelihood, and we recognize that. And by no means do we want to stop persons from making their livelihood. However, we also have to take into consideration that some of the areas that have been placed on that list are areas that fall within our hotspots. And our hotspots, really, in layman terms, is really an area which is prone to some form of violence, incidents where persons may be affected in some way or form by violence. It may also be a situation where there are challenges in policing these particular spaces, and as a result, we may have to make a decision that at a particular time, based on what is happening within the space, that at this time we cannot allow any events. And of course, these are things that we review from time to time, right? So, of course, this is not indefinite. But again, I will reiterate that we have to take the safety of the wider community into consideration. There are also other factors that we take into consideration when we decide not to grant permits. So, and simply as events within housing schemes, and we have just made that decision that look, we're not granting permits for events within the housing schemes. The fact is, even the Noise Abatement Act speaks to events or noise within vicinity of hospitals, dwelling houses, guest houses, anything that is likely to cause some form of disturbance or annoyance. We have to take these things into consideration. Now, a lot of persons don't believe that, okay, my event is going to bother anybody because I will speak to my neighbors. But the truth be told, some persons are fearful of telling you, no, that is not something that I want to happen within my community. I don't want it beside me. I don't want it 100 meters from where I live. But then they may answer in the affirmative to somebody who's asking just out of fear. We have intelligence, we have information to substantiate some things, some of which we cannot necessarily divulge to the general public, but we make these decisions based on our information and intelligence within this space. So safety of persons comes first. And of course, we look at the particular space. If it's a housing scheme, we're definitely not going there with you.
All right, clearly stated. All right, Lennox Mighty, very useful information for promoters and patrons. Awesome. Glad you're finding the information useful. Please remember to share and make sure more people get the info. Hi, Shakira. Thank you all for joining. All right, we are coming close to the 1 hour mark. So, Officer Roan, we're gonna let you do final thoughts in a little while. But before we get there, as it relates to curfews, DSP Cardoza, what generally happens in terms of sensitizing the community so they know that don't bother come and request any permit because this is what is happening in this space? What's usually done outside of the general announcement? You might hear it on the radio. Is there any direct communication with communities? And if so, how is that done generally?
Right. So usually for the curfew, we try to keep that element of surprise because I mean we want to catch the criminals within the space. So we normally do not announce this beforehand. So we allow for the appointed time, the media, it is announced via the media. From there now, we will have our officers going through the communities and sensitizing them and giving some instruction as to what it is we expect or don't expect. Now, for the curfews, um, persons, citizens may be asked to stay indoors by a certain time because we will state a particular time frame that persons are to be indoors. And of course, we try as best as possible not to be very rigid, and we use some amount of wisdom and discretion as relates to persons who we believe to be law-abiding, persons who are going to work, who are returning home, but persons will be given the particular instructions by the officers who are patrolling the space. We have persons from our Community Safety and Security Department who may go through and announce some instructions via the public address system. So there are several means in which we pass on this information to the community, but I will say that we have to maintain some level of an element of surprise initially, based on what we plan to or what we hope to achieve within this space.
Fair enough, because we're talking about security and it's a part of it, right? All
Yes.
right. So, Officer Road, can you share with us in 2 minutes some quick fire safety tips that we should be considering?
Okay. I always say, try to invest in an in a fire by purchasing a fire extinguisher, right? It is very important to you. A fire extinguisher may cost maybe 20,000 or 15,000, depends on the size, right? But think about it. Invest in a fire extinguisher for 20,000 and lose your house for 20 million. Which one do you prefer? At the end of the day, you're going to lose 20 million. And if you think about it, if you should sacrifice yourself and purchase a fire extinguisher for 20,000, that could save your life, save your family lives, and also save your house. Two, invest in a smoke detector. Very important. Remember, most of the times when we are sleeping, we are partially half dead, right? And some of us snore so loud and sleep so dead. We don't even if a man move the house, you don't even hear, right? So a smoke detector now will activate and make a loud sound once there's a fire. Once the smoke hit it, it will alert you that there's a fire, and that can allow you to evacuate the building as well. Fire extinguisher is very easy to use. The acronym PASS, PASS, pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep from side to side. Stay approximately 6 to 8 feet away from the fire, and you put out the fire with the fire extinguisher. Also, do not burn rubbish in open spaces. A matter of fact, it's against the law to burn rubbish, right? Do not leave electrical iron or hot plates or other electrical appliances plugged in. So whenever you're leaving home, try to plug out everything except the refrigerator, and try to put the refrigerator on a surge protector. Replace damaged electrical cords. We know Jamaicans say most of the times, we use candle bag and we tie it up, or we get piece of tape and we tape it up and all those stuff. We know that these electrical cords are Chinese made, so they don't last any long. So once it damaged, please, I'm asking you, replace them. Do not run electrical wires in walkways, doorways, under or behind furniture, because we'll walk and then put it under the carpet. You don't know what is taking place, or walk on it on a daily basis, and then the cord may be break, and you don't know, and that can start a fire as well. Once there's a fire, please evacuate the building. Shout out fire so that everyone in the household can know that there's a fire, and then you evacuate. Do drills, evacuation drill, with your household, with your family, so that if the real thing happens, you know exactly what to do. You don't become panic, and then you start to run up and down like madams and all over the place, right? So once you practice, practice become perfect, and then if the real thing should happen, then you know exactly what to do. Keys, place keys near to the exit, right? So if you know that your house is grilled and you have a lot of padlocks and so forth, ensure that only the keys for the door and the padlock are placed on that bunch. You don't want to have 20 keys, 10 keys on that bunch. If there's a fire you cannot see, you don't know which key is for which one, for which door, for which lock. So if you know it's two, you put the two on it, and you know exactly what to do when they even put it, and put it at a location that it is easily accessible. So in the event of a fire, then you know exactly what to do. So these are some of the tips. Know the fire department number nearest to you, the fire station. 110 is very important, which is the emergency number. But knowing the fire station number is much, much easier. Think about it. 110, you call the operator. Suppose to call the operator, you're calling from, say, for example, a fire is in gutters in Ulaba, and you call the operator and your phone went dead. You might say, oh, there's a fire in gutters. Phone went dead. The operator is from gutters in St. Elizabeth. What do you think the operator going to do? The operator going to try to contact the gut because the operator only know about one gutter. So the operator going to try to contact the fire station nearest the gutters in St. Elizabeth, while the fire is in gutters in Ulaba. So these are some of the things that you need to think about and need to put in place.
Wow, I couldn't cut you. We're at a little over 1 hour, but this is really, really important. I couldn't cut you with that one at all. And we have the chat is blazing with how informative and how many people are not aware of these things. Right. DSP Cardoza, we can't close without you sharing your final thoughts with the viewers before we go.
All right, I know time is against us. Just security, security. Very, very important to the police. Just ensure that whenever you plan on having an event, apply within the requisite time frame. Even apply even earlier than the requisite time frame. Speak to the police within the community and get your security plan in place. There must be a plan in place in order for your event to be a successful one. Ensure that you have all the requisite permits. Without the requisite permits, then at the end of the day, you may find yourself liable for prosecution.
Great info indeed. Yes, please remember to share the link and invite others to watch so that they can become more informed and play an active role in and looking out for their personal safety and security to make it easier for all of us. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for sharing space and your expertise here on the Serenity Resource Connector. I'm sure that we have all learned a whole lot this evening. I know that I need to put that fire extinguisher and the smoke detector on my list of things to get. So I'm sure that others have taken note as well, and we'll be sharing as much as we possibly can, so more people will be aware of these things. All right, so this brings us to the end of this month's. All right, quickly, could the police and the fire department jointly have sensitization meetings with these event promoters?
Definitely. That can be planned.
All right.
That can be arranged.
Beautiful. All right, fantastic. So we do this every second Thursday. We focus on community safety and security here on the Serenity Resource Connector. I'm inviting you all who are watching now, going to be watching the replay. Next Thursday, invite all your young business people to tune in. We're going to have some inspiration from a young business person sharing her story so that you can be inspired to step out and do that thing that you have been thinking about, dreaming about, to just get it done. All right, so please share with your community as soon as the information is out. And of course, we have our counselors update coming up on 4th Thursday. We are going over, or should I say, up to Frankfield, and I think it's not Frankfield, we did Frankfield last month. Kellitz and Croftsville will be coming on. So you have two counselors coming on 4th Thursday to share what's happening in their divisions and what it is that we can do as Clarendonians, whether we are still living in the parish, wherever we are, to make this space a better space for one and all. Thank you again to our Clarendon Division, police and fire department for sharing these really important measures and tips for us to consider. Have yourselves a great night.
Same to you.